Okay. Today we're going to be taking a look at the American Tier 3 best battleship, the St. Louis class protected cruiser. But first, we'll take a look at this. Today, September 15th, Wargaming came down with matchmaker changes for the release version of the game, and they're very relevant to what I was going to make this afternoon with the St. Louis. What Wargaming has done here is they have gone through and they have clipped off at least one tier of matchmaking for everything that's not a tier 10. They've generally nerfed matchmaker down. So if you're a tier 8 game, you cannot have tier 5 ships in it anymore. Tier 7 game, can you have tier 4 ships? Now, at the very bottom of that, you have the tier 3 battleships, which are notoriously bad, and tier 3 cruisers, which you'll notice that the tier 3 cruiser still can see up to tier 5, but the tier 3 battleship can't. So the tier 3 battleships, Kawachi in South Carolina, will now solely see tier 3 and 4 games. So they'll be a heck of a lot more playable than video you've seen so far of them. The St. Louis, on the other hand, is still going to be able to see tier 5. And you'll be able to tell you, we'll talk about why in a little bit. Incidentally, the matchmaker changes in this case almost unequivocally made the Izumo the worst ship in the game, because the Miyogi, the Kawachi, the Colorado in particular, have gotten their opponents nerfed. Like Colorado can't see Yamato, Montana, or the overpowered 210 aircraft carriers anymore, and probably be a heck of a lot more playable. Whereas the Izumo's losing some food. It can now only see 7 through 10 games. So no tier 6s, can still see Colorado. That's about it. So anyway, back to our friend the St. Louis. This is a very interesting ship, and it's probably one of the most overpowered ships in the entire game. And it's overpowered for interesting reasons that we're going to go through here. If you look at the St. Louis, this is a pre-dreadnought. This is not a very advanced ship. It looks like a pirate ship. It has guns coming out of absolutely everywhere like a porcupine. So many guns that you really don't care when you get one shot off. That's completely irrelevant to gameplay of this thing. And it fires in broadsides. And it fires in ripple succession. So why is this ship competitive with dreadnoughts and is... If you look at its stats here, survivability 34. Langley has 40 survivability, so that's an aircraft carrier. They're thinking here that the St. Louis is soft. Au contraire, the survivability stat in this game pretty much only keeps track of hit points, and so Langley has nominally more hit points than the St. Louis. And here you see the Kuma has survivability 29, Miyogi 53. Over here to the Texas, which is 58. New York, excuse me. Always think of it as Texas. But survivability 40 versus 34. So what's going on here? Well, basically the St. Louis is almost impossible to damage. So that it has somewhat less hit points than Langley is not relevant, and the survivability stat's pointless. If you look at the St. Louis from the side, there's very few places to shoot this thing effectively. The bow will be over-penetrated by armor-piercing ammunition. The stern will be over-penetrated by armor-piercing ammunition. Most of the superstructure and the gun area will be over-penetrated by armor-piercing ammunition. The actual citadel in what is called a protected cruiser here is mostly below the waterline and is really quite tough to hit with anything less than a 14-inch gun. So if you fire AP at this thing as a battleship, you're going to do about 830 damage pop. That's not going to really get you all that far. It has 30,000 hit points, and it has a heck of a lot of guns to fire back at you with. So, why is this so unique? Well, it's really a case of a number of mechanics coming together. We go over to the tech tree, and you see here you go through the Erie, the Chester, and then you are down to the St. Louis as your tier 3, and then you go across to the South Carolina tier 3. And this is, again, you're going to see a survivability change here. Because we are at 34 for the St. Louis. And we go across to the South Carolina, and we are at 33. Now, that's actually pretty accurate. St. Louis has more hit points than South Carolina. That's about the only thing that's accurate about the survivability stat there. But if you shoot the South Carolina of armor-piercing ammunition, you're going to hit armor, and you're going to penetrate, and you're going to hit citadels. You can't really hit the citadel on this thing with the South Carolina's guns. So if you get into a damage trading exchange, and you have an inaccurate dreadnought, well, you're going to do maybe 830, maybe 2,000 in a salvo in 30 seconds. And he's going to do one heck of a lot more to you in 30 seconds. So now we're going to go into a game, and I'm going to show you exactly what that is. And this is an ideal game here. This is St. Louis's versus other St. Louis's and some poor tier 2 ships. And you see that St. Louis is very, very popular. And well, you'll see why. If you look at the gun layout, you also see something interesting here. It doesn't have turrets, but it doesn't really need turrets. It can fire a very large chunk of its guns on pretty much any axis with very little warning, and you're going to see that as well. So there are three ways that ships in World of Warships and tanks, World of Tanks, tend to wind up overpowered or underpowered. The first is that they're mistiered, and in World of Warships, the best example of that's the Cleveland. It's a tier 6. It should probably be a tier 8. Wargaming even admits this much. World of Tanks, that was the long-standing problem with the upgraded KV-1. The Tiger tank got the worst end of that, where they were mistiered as a tier 7 and had to fight things they had no business fighting, including tier 10 tanks. So it can go both ways. The second way, and the one that applies to St. Louis, is you have a bunch of mechanics that various different teams have been working on, but it comes to it together and makes a Frankenstein monster that no one could have possibly wanted or intended to be as strong or as weak as it is. And that's what's going on here. And the reason for that is it has all the benefits of high explosive fire. It has, you see, is nearly constant outgoing broadside ripple fire. It starts a lot of fires because of high explosives mechanics, and its armor's pretty insensitive to both high explosive and armor piercing ammunition because of how those mechanics shake out. So yeah, and we're coming across here on the slot, and we're going to see if anyone's dumb enough to go in there. Just checking ship recognition before we start. I don't usually like running a lot of UI when I'm just playing. We'll check it if I really need to, pull up alt, but that's about it. And the third way that ships can get kind of overpowered and tanks get overpowered or underpowered is that Wargaming kind of makes it up. And we'll talk about that a lot more when I'm doing a full review of the game. I'm holding off on that for now due to the change in matchmaking. So now, yeah, we just lost a destroyer right there, bang. And there's no first blood, so guess what? He was killed by our own guys. Yeah, don't fire torpedoes like that. That's not a good idea. Don't drive into torpedo spreads either, especially if you're a destroyer. So now we have a target, tier 3 Tenryu, and we open up. High explosive shots, too far ahead. But look what I do. I'm already switching to armor piercing as it hits the water. Second after the last shell splashes down, new shells, armor piercing, better lead, and right on target. Bang, 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 and boom, Citadel. 3,300 damage. And you just watch, it keeps piling up, and he's dropping down towards 9,000 hit points, started at 15,100. And I just engaged him. That was the first few salvos. Someone shot at me there. It didn't do a whole heck of a lot. It doesn't matter. Those torpedoes won't reach me. And he's run aground now trying to get away from the gunfire, and he's going to be T-boned by a torpedo, and he's going to blow up before my shells get there. So, lost a little damage there, but they're down a ship, so fine. And this is what the St. Louis does. It just keeps shooting. And that's a big problem. And coming up here, you can see it looks a bit like Baghdad on the eve of the Gulf War. And yeah, that's mostly St. Louis's exchanging fire with other cruisers and particularly other St. Louis's. And so you just see it's constant fire. If you can aim at planes, this ship would actually have pretty good anti-aircraft. As it is very simple to play. It's not very fast, can't move very well, doesn't turn very well, has no anti-aircraft to speak of, can't time its hit point regeneration like the other battleships, but it's a one-trick pony, and it's a very, very, very good trick. It does a lot of damage, and it takes a lot of effort to inflict damage on it, and that's pretty good at low tiers. So anyway, coming around the corner here, South Carolina. South Carolina is in deep trouble. He's would have his hands full with just one St. Louis. He's got 3 shooting at him, and yeah, you can just watch what's happening. And this is what happens if you get into a fight with multiple St. Louis's. You are dead. You can be dead even if you're in a Tier 5 battleship, because it's Tier 5 battleship only has about 20,000 more hit points and not a heck of a lot more fire resistance than South Carolina over here. So yeah, we're all just pouring it on. Those look good, those look good, those look good. And someone else gets the kill, because that's how the shots came in. Fine. Okay, destroyer. A couple seconds later, no hesitation, no turning turrets, no nothing. Just switched up down the broadside. They've got the arc to hit him. Adjust, adjust, blocking shots. Don't care about ammunition. And got blown up by another St. Louis over there, so he's done. New target. Other St. Louis. And so you see, this just keeps going. And, yeah, walk the shots on him, got a first little hit, correct. And, yeah, this isn't like a battleship where you have to aim your salvos. You just keep firing. You're going to fire an awful lot of shots. I fire over 200 shots in this game. And, you see, I'm firing almost all the time. And that's, again, this thing is here for its DPS and its ability to stay in the fight. So, do DPS, get in the fight. And it's almost is more like DPS than DPM, honestly, because you can see the reload rate on this thing and how they reload in sequence. It just keeps going. He's got double fires now. I'm not wasting high explosive ammunition. I'm not wasting anything except high explosive ammunition on him because armor piercing won't do anything. He's dead. Okay, destroyer behind me. Again, turn, no downtime. 4 hits and we incapacitate. Good. Second shot's a little low because I'm turning. Adjust. Gonna bring another salvo, but he gets blown up anyway, so he dropped torps. I can't see them yet, so I'm gonna find that out first. Okay, they're going on that side of me, so I'm gonna turn broadly in line with them. I probably can't get away from all of them, but I don't really care. I can take a hit. I just don't want to turn them loose on the sequence, and they're on that side of me. So yeah, I'm gonna take a hit to the stern here. Can't really do much about that, but still have 20,000 hit points, repair, no more flooding, and go back to trying to kill the other St. Louis. So yeah, this is St. Louis gameplay, and this was a random game I just hopped in for the video, and yeah, it's pretty representative of what you're going to see in these things. I'd be getting more damage, taking a bit more, but also probably doing a whole heck of a lot more. We didn't have quite as many backup St. Louis's, but it is what it is. And we're winning, and we're going to win, so better XP and better credits, and there we go. And this time, I get the last shots, and so boom, sunk. And that's pretty much it, because this is where the St. Louis has its one drawback. It's not fast enough to re-engage. I'm going to be out of the rest of the fight, but who cares? Anyhow, is it going to be fine at Tier 5 with fewer battleships in those matchmaking slots? I think so. This is still a very dangerous ship, even if you are in a Tier 5, because you still burn, and you still take damage from high explosive, and a lot of the areas of the ship will still over-penetrate. So if you're at a St. Louis in Tier 5, just watch out for direct hits from 14-inch shells and try to get close. Gotta be within 10 kilometers to hurt people, but that's about it. And yeah, 66 hits. Citadel, 4 shots, 4 fires, 3 incapacitations, sank someone. St. Louis has just dominated that game. Tenry did a good job. And yeah, that's the damage and the 221 shots fired. So yeah.